Now, I think I briefly mentioned already on this planet there are there are many religions, many faiths, but among them, like Christianity or Hinduism, the major religious tradition. Major means they not only just a sort of faith, but there are some sort of, philosophical sort of views. So among these different religious traditions, basically inspired different philosophical viewpoint, but all carry message of love, compassion, forgiveness, these things. So it helped humanity immense in the past, present, and future also. So now it is important the people better to keep one's own traditional faith. So in Europe, in America, and these countries, non-Buddhist countries, I always mention it is better to keep their own faith. Of course, out of millions of people, some individuals may be exceptional, who mentally or emotionally, according to their mental disposition, other traditions' way of approach is more suitable, and then in that case, it is up to individual right. So then in Asia, more than 2,000 years, Buddhism remained one of the important religions in Asia. As I already mentioned, China. I think that as far as Sanskrit tradition is concerned, I think earliest Sanskrit tradition in foreign language, in foreign countries, besides India. So traditionally, China is a Buddhist country. When I was in China, 1954, 55, at that time, I had opportunity visit many different parts of people of China. So there are a lot of temples, very ancient Buddhist temples. Then the Heart Sutra in Chinese language, chanting Heart Sutra in Chinese language, I never heard in China, only in Singapore. When I first visited in Singapore, then there is some old Chinese monk in the temple, they chant Heart Sutra. So I very much moved at that time. The Heart Sutras chanting in that language, previously in China, most of populated nations. So there was that kind of sort of practice, but nowadays isn't that difficult. Sometimes it becomes illegal. And also Christian faith also, except those officially recognized one, otherwise it's difficult. So now those Chinese community who have the freedom, who freely practice these our traditional sort of religion, it is quite important. So I'm very happy, you Chinese Buddhist brothers, sisters, in free world, you still carry that your traditional Buddhist faith. So thank you very much. Whenever I give some explanation to Chinese Buddhists, I always make sort of salutation to you, because we are junior student of Buddha, you are a senior or older Buddhist student. But meantime, you know, I often is telling as far as the knowledge is concerned, the junior student, so knowledge not bad. So in any way, I personally also feel it is great honor to share some of my own experience and my own knowledge, limited experience, limited knowledge, is to share more elder student of Lord Buddha. So I feel sort of great honor. So then, as I mentioned the other day, now we are in 21st century. You see, those people, now including Tibetan, who not adequate knowledge about Buddhism, and then knowing a modern sort of subject, including modern science, or these things, then they sometimes they feel Buddhism also just traditional, some kind of blind faith. So there are such cases, you see, happening. So therefore, we Buddhists should be 21st century Buddhist. That means knowing modernity, modern things, and meantime, fuller knowledge about sort of whole Buddhist structure. Then we can go side by side. One time, the great the scientist Einstein once he expressed Buddhism can go with modern science, he mentioned. And then, according to my own experience, last more than 30 years, I had some story. About 40 years ago, of course, my interest about science since my childhood there. So then after we came to India, more complete freedom. So then I seriously was thinking dialogue or serious discussion with modern scientists in different field. Then about 40 years ago, one time I expressed that my desire. One American lady who married with one Tibetan, disrobed monk. So I expressed that, my desire. Then she responded, or contact or discuss with scientists is very dangerous, because science is killer of religion. He mentioned that. Then I thought again and again. I thought again and again. Then, according Buddhist sort of way of thinking is, the other day I mentioned the Buddha's own sort of one quotation. Oh, my follower, bhikshus, scholars, should not accept my teaching out of faith, but rather out of investigation. experiment. Through that way, once you convince, then you accept my teaching. So that's a very, very scientific way of approaching. So like Nagarjuna and many other great philosophers, thinkers, some Buddha's own teaching, some text, they reject this Buddha's sort of word. Buddha state that some different reasons you should not accept that literally. Oh. So that clearly shows that according Buddhism in general, particularly according Mahayana or Sanskrit tradition, the Nalanda tradition, we have liberty to reject Buddha's own word. So I myself also now reject the existence of Mount Meru and flat world, sun and the moon go like that. Some Buddhist text like Basubandhu's Abhidhammakosha Karika mentioned like that. So I already take the liberty. I do not accept these things. Maybe some people who years is devoted to form of offering the mandala in the center, Mount Meru, and then these different sort of, because of the islands or continents, like that, and the sun and the moon go like that, and then on top of the Mount Meru, there's some land of Devas and Devis, like that. So I think when I publicly so state among, I think several 10,000 was the audience one time in South India, I stated that. I do not believe what Abhidhammakosha is stated. So that kind of liberty, that kind of way of thinking, is those Nalanda masters start that kind of way of thinking. So therefore, Buddhist faith is not at all something like blind faith. In 60s, 70s, some Chinese communist propaganda, they stated Tibetan thinking is very, very backward. And due to Tibetan Buddhism, Tibetan mind is something so that very, very sort of primitive, right? Primitive. So scientific knowledge increase, then these blind faith, primitive religious faith, automatically sort of disappear. But then, since 60, 70, 80, 90, instead of diminishing, more and more scientists now showing interest about Buddhist sort of concept, or about Buddhist sort of, mainly Buddhist psychology and also Buddhist philosophy. So I can say the Buddhist way of thinking is more realistic. Realistic means scientific way of thinking, like that. So it is very, very important. We, as a follower of Buddhism or practitioner of Buddhism, we must study Buddhism. So Buddhism, more complete form. That's very, very important. In Chinese tradition, samdamba the Takshibo Samabe. The samdamba, the meditation, one time in Japan, one occasion, I talked on sort of college. You see, they invited me and some talk. Then, after sort of talk, question and answer, one student asked me, his teacher stated, told them that only through meditation you can achieve Buddhahood. Only meditation. So, oh yeah, and he asked that, it is true or not? Then I mentioned the meditation is a vast sort of subject, right? You see, there are a lot of different kind of meditation. So through that way, okay. But usually meditation, in the sense, close your eye, thinking nothing. Something like thoughtlessness. That I think some pigeons also I think have that sort of ability. When you see, they are fed well, no immediate danger, then they meditate quite nicely. And the small mouse also, you see, they after eating something, then they wash, cleaning their mouth like that, then remain very peacefully. We can consider these small animals also some kind of meditation they practice. So the Buddhist meditation, there are a lot of variety, and mainly, as I mentioned earlier, utilize human intelligence, thinking, investigation, research work is extremely important. So then I start dialogue with the modern scientist. Now 30 years passed. Now, as a result of our discussion, some university like Wisconsin University, Emory University, and then Stanford University, and these universities, and also some other university, actually, you see, carrying some further research work and experiment on the basis of, let's say, the Buddhist concept. Then, eventually, they found some very positive result. The person becoming more calm, the stress reduced, blood pressure reduced, and the person becoming much more pleasant sort of type, very peaceful, and the social social interaction also become much easier, like that. So this university, they carry further more research. Now some university, the professors, scientists, now thinking more research about, as I mentioned earlier, the other day, after death. You see, a few weeks, body remain fresh. So this subject, some of the professors used to want to carry some, deeper research on this field. So, like that. And then meantime, study and getting more knowledge, and in the meantime, implement. That's very crucial, very important. Otherwise, the study just remain knowledge, intellectual level, not much sort of translation here, then not much helpful. So, study, practice, combine. That's very important. So, that much I want to say. Then nothing, no questions.
You said that we have to the 21st century Buddhist, can you advise on how to show bodhicitta in the most effective ways today?
Once you gain some knowledge, then I think when we look the world, look at our world, you will get a lot of sort of, how to say, something like teaching from the event. Lessons, yes, lessons. Now, obviously, there are too many violence. Individual level, community level, or national level. I think these many cases, I think too much self-centered, selfish sort of motivation. And ignorance. The global economic crisis, about 3 years ago, when global economic crisis happened, out of my own curiosity, I asked some of my friends who are sort of the advisor of multinational companies or some businessmen. Then they say, there are some factors of this crisis, like greed and speculation and lack of transparency and ignorance. So these very much related with moral ethics. So then similarly, the global warming like that, also you see, they are very much related with moral ethics. Then, in many countries, particularly like China, and even India, there are a lot of sort of corruptions, the lack of moral principle. In the political field also, I quite often use expressing some cases, unfortunately, concerned people looks money is more important than moral ethics. So that creates a lot of problem. So when we see these problems, then we get more sort of conviction. We need some effort to promote moral ethics, irrespective of whether believer or non-believer. So that usually I call secular moral ethics. The way to promote that also without touching religion, simply use our common sense and common experience, and then scientific findings. We can make better awareness about this value of moral ethics, not through teaching, but through education way. So that actually in Europe and also in India, some people now seriously, you see, thinking or working how to introduce moral ethics, secular way, into secular education field. Like that. Then next question.
How fundamental is human rights? How fundamental is human rights? Do we have to achieve something else before we can pursue protection of human rights? 도미 톱단디 가지지 개침이 나서 이 톱단디 저런지야 대원이 자기 신바 듣고 가 저가 도미 톱단 저런지야 다 된다라 对拆迁刑法典管的中国人。
correct?
拆迁刑。
I think human right, that's quite big subject. I'm not a specialist. You see, according to the now universally is state human right. Sometimes, as a Buddhist, sometimes I feel if we too much emphasis human right, then the other animals, other mammals have seems to be not less right. So of course we human beings also like any other sort of sentient being, we have right to live. Not only we sentient being, but also is the plants, these, every I think living thing have their right to survive, to live. Then I think human right, in the case of human being, I think mainly, I think the Chinese communist leaders, they consider the main sort of meaning of human rights is feeding properly, sufficiently, then give shelter. That they consider seems to be the basic human right. Then critics say, including myself, we human being, not like animal. Animal feed, give shelter, no immediate disturbance, then okay. They get sort of complete satisfaction. But we human being, we have this intelligence. So a lot of sort of ideas, a lot of visions usually come. So therefore, without freedom of thought, freedom of speech, human right cannot be complete. That's my view. So religious faith, also the animal, no connection of religious freedom. But we human being, because of this brain, so among humanity, there is something which we call religious faith and different philosophies. So, human level right, much more vast. Not only just existence, just a survival, but a lot of sort of requirement there. So without a freedom of speech, freedom of thought, and freedom of movement, very difficult. Like that. And then to Chinese communists, I usually telling my Chinese friends whenever I met, mainly from mainland China, the democracy, the established democracy in China, immediately, I little reservation. The Chinese people, over billion, 1.3 billion Chinese people, no experience about democracy. And then in rural area, a lot of poor people still there. So without more centralized authority, I think a lot of complication may rise. So therefore, I prefer gradual change, not immediate. However, we must make effort, make start, transparency. Look here, 1.3 billion Chinese people have every right to know the reality. Communist leader cannot say Chinese people have no right to know the reality. if China they want to progress, the knowledge extremely important, and knowledge of the reality, not some of the knowledge just to see through a small red book, read and recite, not that kind of knowledge, but the more wider sort of perspective knowledge of the world, very important. So therefore, the firstly, 1.3 billion Chinese people have every right to know the reality. That's a basic human right, one of the human rights. Then, when 1.3 billion Chinese people knows the reality, they also have the ability to judge what's right or what's wrong. So therefore, censorship is immoral. So censorship must stop. Oh, tea. Yes, no, tea. So this is one thing. Then the judiciary system in Zhongguo Dalu, the independent judiciary system is very necessary. Otherwise, look, those poor peasants or factory worker or some ordinary people who really suffer under local sort of officials or city bully or injustice. So there's no independent judiciary system. Those people really facing helpless. So the independent judiciary system and so the Chinese judiciary system must raise up to the international standard of judiciary system. That I think very important. So these two things, without censorship, transparent, and then improve judiciary sort of the system, and should reach international sort of standard. That I feel really urgently need. This is my feeling. So you, as a Singaporean or people from Hong Kong, I think keep in your mind these things. This is not sort of anti-China, not necessarily anti-communist. In order to build people's sort of China, respectful nation, and with that carry more effective, constructive role on this planet. The present sort of situation, no independent judiciary, too much censorship, everything controlled by party. How can you can develop trust or respect from the rest of the world? Without trust, respect, then people from China, you see, I think really, then I think that kind of the distrust or disrespect or suspicion from the rest of the world really big sort of the hindrance, the Chinese sort of the contribution for a better world. People from China, most populated nation, now economically also now very powerful. So China have the ability to make effective contribution, better world. But in order to carry that, respect, trust from the rest of the world is very necessary. I know many Japanese and many Indian, and also some Malaysian sort of people, Malaysian sort of people. You see, like Tunku Abdul Rahman, many years ago, the Prime Minister, I think first Prime Minister of Malaysia, isn't it? Isn't it? I think in 60s, I have opportunity to visit Singapore, and then also some part, I think, Malaysia. So, I think at least two occasions I met Tunku Abdul Rahman. And then some others. And also some Vietnamese. It's a neighboring state of people from China. Sometimes they have a little bit sort of concern because of lack of transparency. Through that way, unpredictable. Isn't it? So that I feel. So with human rights, answer for human rights, I also, you see, touch some political issue. Now, this is actually very much related with human rights, isn't it? 1.3 billion Chinese people have every right, you see, to enjoy a certain right which the rest of the world, rest of the humanity enjoy. They also have every right to enjoy these things. Now, I myself, 9 years, from 51 to 59, with our new boss, communist. So during 9 years, I also learned a little bit how to carry hypocritic way. Feel something here, but saying something a little different. So it is really very, very harmful. Sometimes I really feel the communist Chinese regime seems like great teacher of art of hypocrisy. It is really sad, that great nation, ancient nation, with rich cultural heritage, and Chinese people, actually hardworking, realistic. Look, wherever Chinese community remain, in America, in France, in San Francisco area, or Washington area, New York area, wherever there are community there, they create Chinatown. And also I met, I think some mayors, I think one time, I think Kasa, West Canada, Vancouver. I think one time, Vancouver mayor or something, one Chinese, who immigrated to Canada, and he told me when he immigrated Canada first time or when he immigrated, in his pocket $10 or something, nothing. And as a realistic, hardworking, eventually he become quite rich, then join politics, then become mayor. This is an indication. Han people, Han brothers, sisters, really hardworking, cultured people. So I usually telling my Indian friend, since Chinese community, wherever they live, you see, they create Chinatown. So Indian also should create Indian town. India also equally, you see, cultured people, a big nation. Again, India also now over 1 billion population. So like that. So therefore, they, in order to carry effective rule, on this planet, and also respect from the rest of the world. China deserved that. But obstacle in these things, not outside force, but their own internal certain systems really create bad image, like that. So that, I think, a not sort of negative attitude towards people of China, with sincere motivation, help them, educate them. This narrow-minded sort of thinking. I think one sort of silly question, I think silly sort of story. There's some of the Chinese hardliner officials describe me as a demon. What benefit? Nobody believes I am demon. Even I may be demon, but warm-hearted demon. So, that I think everywhere you see people seems to see number of people everywhere is really showing me loves, friendship. So then I felt I'm not necessarily be demon. So like this, you see these out of their anger, they just blast. Silly, isn't it? Without thinking properly here. Yeah. So these are, as you see, we discussed today, anger brings some kind of energy, but blind energy. So these are the very clear examples, isn't it? Like that. So I think the great damage the people of China sort of image and Chinese important future role, I think China must open. That I feel. So 9 years in Tibet, I began to learn hypocrisy. Then 59 came to India, I liberated, really. Liberation army brought some suspicion. But India, democracy really liberated my mind. Yes, now, next question.
In your opinion, Your Holiness, what are the three most important things or attitudes to support the Christian community?
Christian
community.
One thing, very clear, I always is telling, on this planet, the most sort of effective contribution regarding education made by Christian brothers, sisters. No question. Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Europe, of course, no question. In India, I noticed some of the very, very remote area. We can find some missionaries, sort of, or say the nurses, missionaries school, missionaries hospital, and those remote area, facility very poor, but these Christian brothers, sisters, they live in this area and totally dedicated well-being of the concerned sort of poor people, mainly in field of education and health. Wonderful. We Buddhists not done much that. And Hindu also, you see, quite few. But Ramakrishna organization now, recent few decades, they really making sort of effort promoting education from their organization. We Buddhists still remain behind. We move these fields a little slowly. Then the Christian missionary work, that little complicated. One time, what called in America, they got a not the Mormons is Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah, the Mormon sort of organization. Their headquarters, they invited me. I went there, and then at the public talk, I mentioned the Christian brothers, sisters who carry some, as I mentioned earlier, this social sort of service, immense, excellent. But then meantime, some Christian brothers, sisters, you see, carry also the sort of conversion. Now that is, we have to sort of make a distinction. In those areas which local people have no, sound sort of basis religious tradition, then promote Christianity is right, good. But then those areas who already have some rich religious faith tradition there, and this area, the conversion as a movement is not good. Now, for example, in Mongolia, after Mongolia become a free country, some missionaries from South Korea, I met there, they came to see me, then I told them, this is a Buddhist country, traditionally. So you see, your conversion, Christian conversion, is not good. You see, they carry conversion, not sort of the explanation about these sort of philosophical views, these things, but conversion through money, dollar. Once you converted and accept as a Christian, you get $15. So some of the Mongolian, they're also quite clever. Each year become conversion. So they got, you see, $15 each year. So these are, I mentioned to them, this is not, that kind of practice is not good. Now here, Mongolia, traditionally, at least last several centuries, Buddhist country, so let them follow their own religion. So I mentioned that, like that. So I mentioned at the Mormon headquarters, I mentioned, so such area where very rich traditional religious faith there, then not good, making effort conversion. Then conflict. There's danger, start conflict. That's not good. And particularly at the time, we from all sides try to making effort to promote religious harmony, and such sort of period, such sort of narrow-minded conversion, not good. And some time back, some Christian organization, you see, in some area, I noticed is some Buddhist sort of teaching or something happened. Then some pamphlet they carry. Then I think one time, somewhere, I think my program, some lecture to Buddhist community in important Buddhist center. So afterward, some rains come. So the local Christian community, because of the published, small sort of say, pamphlet, you see, because of Buddhist teaching carry, so God feel anger, so the heavy rain happen. Yeah, among the Europeans, any American? Some American? Oh, one American. 1, 2. Yes, okay. So, one Tibetan who live in America, once he told me some narrow-minded Christian in America, you see, express. Now Dalai Lama quite often came to America. So he lead a lot of American go to hell. So it is quite obvious. Now you see, I think in Buddhists, among the Buddhists also, see, when they sort of, I think the Kumbh Mela, the Hindu great sort of, every 12 years, great sort of religious, because of that, religious sort of festival or something in Hyderabad, Allahabad. I think 30, 40 years ago, my first sort of visit or pilgrimage to that sort of occasion, I received some sort of telegram, some Buddhist group. They protested me. You are Buddhist, should not participate in the Hindu festival. Then second time, I think third time, I visit. They invited me. I happily accepted that invitation and went there because I respect all these different traditions, and particularly Hinduism is like, you see, twin brothers. Buddhism, Hinduism go like that. But then second time, third time, now no longer protest from Buddhist community. So when I like that, so therefore, it is quite understandable. But due to lack of knowledge about the value of other tradition, then just is a thing, concept of one truth, one religion. So that one truth, concept of one truth, one religion, individual practitioner, that concept is very relevant. I am Buddhist, one truth, one sort of, one religion, that's Buddhism. But in the terms of community, now for example, this house here, already several truths, several religions already there. Some Christians, some Buddhists, some perhaps non-believer, and some Hindus, some Muslims maybe, already here. It's a fact. Several truths, several religions already there. So we must overcome the contradiction. Concept of one truth, one religion, concept of several truths, several religion, through because of the thinking. In individual case, yes, concept of one truth, one religion is very relevant. In the terms of several people, the concept of several truth, several religion is relevant. So no contradiction. So as I mentioned yesterday or day before yesterday, we should make distinction, faith and respect. Faith, one's own religion, and respect to all religions. So in that way, the conversion is not good. Like that. And then those areas, no sort of proper religious faith. Then conversion, immense help to them. Like that. Yes, then?
In analyzing the ultimate nature of the object, we come to In analyzing the ultimate nature of the object, we come to realize the emptiness of the object's independent existence. Both the independent existence of the object and also the form of the object cannot be found. This non-dual and the non-residual emptiness found through analysis, how is that different from the state of non-conceptual meditation?
Non-conceptual survey. Non-conceptual, there are varieties. Like thoughtlessness, also some kind of non-conceptual. Then also, you see, when you penetrate, like shunyata, you really, because of that, penetrate deeply. Then also one state, that mental state, we also, you see, describe non-conceptual state, like that. So, non-conceptual, there are varieties. And shunyata, when we use the word shunyata, and particularly tandam tabasla, ultimate truth. When the terminology, ultimate truth, there are two things. One, ultimate truth, in the sense, the according common, Tantrayana and Sutrayana, that's emptiness, just a mere, the absence of independent existence. It is kasa, negation, mega.
It's called the non-implicative negative phenomena.
Then the ultimate truth, in this, according the tantric teaching, particularly Mahanuttara Yoga tantric teaching, then it also sometimes refer the subtle mind. In that case, subtle mind itself is Dhruva.
The subtle mind itself is a positive phenomenon.
However, when we meditate on the subtle mind, the understanding of shunyata must go first on the basis, with the help of understanding thoroughly about the emptiness. Then empty nature consciousness develop, yes, a certain sort of consciousness which understand about shunya, but then that empty nature consciousness eventually the grosser level dissolve, then very subtle consciousness remain, then mohingalikata.
So at that point, then you reach the level of non-implicative and negative phenomena.
वैसे ध्रुवशे वैसे न्योंया मिदंब mohingalikata.
So although the clear light mind itself is a positive phenomenon, but then what it realizes is the mere negation of independent existence.
So like Chalchin, Mahamudra, and Dzogchen, you see, refer the clear light of the consciousness. So that teaching comes from Mahanuttara Yoga Tantrayana, like that. So, when you read some text about Mahamudra and about Dzogchen, you need some knowledge about the basic sort of the Nagarjuna sort of views and Chandrakirti's views, Shantadeva's views are important. Without sufficient knowledge about that, then there are sort of what's the because of possibility of misunderstanding.
Why do we forget the path of happiness when we are in trouble?
That is obviously one animal, while you're beating then that animal, impossible to get some kind of happiness. Impossible. Now we human being, because of this intelligence, there is possibility. Now one sort of example. One my close friend, one monk, old monk from Namgyal Monastery. He spent about 19 years in Chinese Gulag. A lot of difficulties. And then, early 80, he got the sort of permission, like others, some Tibetans. He eventually come here. And then we talk, because we know each other before 1959 very closely. Very good monk. So then he told me, while he was in Gulag, few occasions, he faced some danger. I thought, danger on his life, maybe. Then I asked, what kind of danger? Then he told me, danger of losing compassion towards Chinese. So he considered, you see, it is very, very important to keep compassionate attitude towards those people who actually, because of perpetrator. He considered forget compassion towards them is dangerous. And then another sort of great scholar, I know him, 1955, when I visit his own monastery in Amdo area, in the Trishikir, Labrang Monastery. A great sort of scholar. I think, actually, most probably, I remember he was the teacher of the top sort of Lama of that monastery. So he, I think 57 or 58, I think 58. So from that monastery, few hundred monks arrested by Chinese authority. Then some of them eventually shot, death sentence. So the one monk, from prison, from Gulag, when reach the place where shot should come, he requested that Chinese soldier who going to kill him, said, let me pray a few sentences. Then he recite. Tena Jisun Lama Tuchi, Mojundre, Dictu Tungegun, Mulutata Dala Membata, Target Tegishana Dawai, Drugudana number Chinjilo, 60 soon. Now, let me kill.
So this scholar recited this verse from Lama Chepa. Thus, my kind guru, noble guru, may you bless me so that I may be able to take on all the suffering and the negativities of all sentient beings on myself, and that I may be able to give all the positivities that I have to them.
So, such case, actually, now, within few minutes, die. But no anger, still peaceful mind, and sort of practice bodhicitta thinking. So, such case, passing through difficult period, painful experience, but still can keep peace of mind. Only human being can do like that. I think the other tradition also, I think, is passing through difficult period, even at time of dying, but remember God, tremendous sort of faith, sort of submission, total submission to God. Such sort of practitioner, I think at the moment, difficult period, ordinary people at the time of death is a little bit sort of desperate, but that person still can keep a calm mind. So that's the only way. Otherwise, it's a painful, wild, painful experience to see getting away, passing through painful experience, and still remain happy, not easy. Unless maybe a drug or too much alcohol. Then maybe your mind remain kasuda, dull sorry. Your mind becomes dull, isn't it? Otherwise, the mind remains very sharp, very clear. Then, while passing through difficult, painful experience, still keep happiness or calm. It's difficult. Yes. Next question.
If everything has a cause, that in turn has its own cause and so on, then is it the case that all our actions are predetermined? And how then can I decide whether or not to have bodhicitta? If it would seem that whether or not I decide to have bodhicitta is something that has been determined by the chain of preceding causes.
The destination. Of course, the day-by-day experience is directly linked previous actions, previous karma. Karma means action. Now, action is one sort of a sentient being with certain motivation, and then start or carry some action. That's karma. So karma, what's it?
So within the karma, there are those which are certain to give rise to the effects, and karmas which are not yet certain.
So the previous one, something certain now. That is strong, the action carried by strong motivation, whether positive or negative, that kind of karma is more or less fixed. Then second one, without strong motivation, just as he carried certain actions. That is
uncertain.
So therefore, now our daily life, some painful experience. Certainly, is due to some of the past negative karma. Now, in future is concerned. Now, present sort of event due to past karma, that you cannot much, you cannot change much. Of course, because of confession, these things also, you see, or you create, although one past negative karma, very sort of strong or powerful past karma there. If that karma remain same way, then sooner or later you have to face some sort of consequences. But at present, if you create another positive karma, which more powerful than the previous negative karma, then the previous negative karma become weak or
it becomes impotent to give rise to its effect.
And then also, you see, as present, you see, present thing due to, heavily depend on past sort of action. Similarly, in future, very much related with present our action. So karma means action. Action means someone carry certain sort of action. So therefore, ultimately, karma is within our own hand. So from that viewpoint, our own destination is within our own hand. There are sometimes people say, oh, due to my karma, nothing can be done. That's a mistake. That, I think, seems like the expression of lazy people. No courage to make change, that is a karma, but just lazy, then say, oh, due to my karma. I think sometimes we Tibetans also, you see, there are such people, you see, due to laziness and do not want to work hard or practice these things. So then they say, oh, due to my karma. Yes, that's it. So that's wrong because of the wrong understanding, misunderstanding. The very word karma means action. Action, our action. So, some negative action there, then more forceful, positive action comes, then that becomes weak. And eventually cannot produce negative consequences, like that. Yes, next question.
If we have breached a certain vow, but the motivation leading to the action which caused the breach of the vow is to benefit other beings, will this constitute a bodhisattva root downfall?
I think this morning I mentioned Vinaya precepts, according to our sort of sutra, our Pratimoksha, 253 precepts, mainly concerning physical conduct, verbal conduct. Then Bodhisattva's vows or precepts, mainly related with mental thinking. So I already mentioned, I think this morning or yesterday also, or dependent Jinjunaliya, Tujingao Ringsigwe, Kakwanamja Telanangs.
So in Bodhisattva Charyavatara it says that the compassionate one who sees the future and even allows those things which are prohibited.
Wider, for future's name, the wider perspective.
Who sees from a wider perspective things clearly allows certain things, actions which are prohibited in certain cases.
So one example, little bit silly example. Someone who really developed too much attachment, one article, for example, one article, too much attachment, and eventually, you see, that leads some problems or negative karma. Then, in order to sort of stop that kind of attachment, you stolen that. Share somewhere.
Share.
Not share somewhere.
Sure.
Mainly Maridam, not only mainly, purely, you see, benefit to that person. If that article remained there, too much attachment, and with that attachment, jealousy, anger, hatred, fear. I think another example. One person who have some $100 about, you see, a few $1,000s in the box. Then that person, in case now, for example, cannot sleep well because of anxiety, or might be that dollar may take away someone. So whole night remain like that. And one night, second night, then physical eventually ruin. Then out of sheer sense of concern of that person's sort of health, then take away that money. Now then that person now no longer sort of worry or fear about that money. So that kind of stealing purely benefit to that person. So eventually that kind of stealing, positive stealing. So I wish more people that way, then I can steal more. So like that. And then also there's one story, Buddha's own past sort of life. That you love that.
Yes. So the story is about this captain of a ship who, out of his compassion, when he knew that one of the person on the ship, there were about 500 of them together, and one of them was, when they were coming back from their journey, with all the wealth and gems and so forth, one of them was actually thinking of killing the rest of the people on the ship, and therefore the captain who had this
rest of the 490.
499. He was going to kill, thinking of killing them, and so that all the wealth in the ship could be his. But then the captain knew this through his clairvoyance, and therefore, out of his sheer compassion for this person who was otherwise going to commit, was going to commit this grave negative action, took the action of killing this single person.
So he actually sacrificed his own sort of suffering due to that killing, and in order to sort of save life of 499 persons' life, and the person who going to kill 499 person, this amount of immense sort of sins of killing such number of people, they protect, save from that kind of sin. Then he himself sacrifice his consequences of killing one person. Then he carried the action to eliminate that person. So actually, kill. From Vinaya Sutra is wrong. But from Bodhisattva viewpoint, and his main motivation is compassion. Not only the rest of the 499 people, but also the killer, very much concerned about the killer. There is no other way except eliminate that. So he done that. So it mentioned through that action, he got immense virtues. It mentioned like that. So, and the Vinaya itself, Jeja Mukus. The Narja Jeja Sungdoa, Javangar Jingze, Yang Shugo Jesu Javanza, Narja Jeja Sungdoa.
So in the Vinaya itself, there are certain vows that are laid down by the Buddha first, and then there are emendations.
Previous Buddha make certain sort of rules. Then later, this, under different circumstances, then he mentioned now such sort of rule now no longer relevant to such circumstances. So therefore, ngar kashava Jesu now, ngar kashava Jesu duva.
Certain vows which are prohibited in the early versions are allowed in the later versions.
So that's, as Shantideva mentioned,
so because of that, Shantideva also says one should carry out one's activities by knowing the purpose.
Purpose according to reality. That's important. Like that. Ultimately, most important is one's own motivation. Like that. Then, next question. I think one last question.
Yes. If the attainment of enlightenment is an individual experience and goal, isn't the bodhisattva path of wanting to gain enlightenment through helping all sentient beings gain enlightenment inherently selfish?
Selfish marvelous. Yes, some kind of selfish there. But usually I describe wise selfish is much better than foolish selfish. Isn't it? No? Our self-centered sort of selfish is really, actually, create more problem, more suffering. So that's a foolish selfish. And if you really love yourself, if you really have the sense of concern of your well-being, not only this life, but infinite life, then take care about others' well-being. Then you get maximum benefit, ultimately Buddhahood. So that kind of selfish is wise selfish, very good. Sometimes, you see, there are sort of misunderstanding. Buddhism, or say the kasurta, devasat kaures.
Sometimes people have this misunderstanding that Buddhism is teaching about detachment towards things.
So sometimes we get the sort of wrong interpretation. Desire, according to Buddhism, desire is bad. No. There are different type of desire. Desire, like happiness of others. Desire overcome suffering, including one's own suffering. It's absolutely right desire. Desire to achieve Buddhahood. Absolutely right. The Buddhist itself, a kind of desire. So, we can make sort of distinction. Desire mixed with attachment that desire is negative. As I mentioned yesterday, or this morning, I mentioned anger develop. The objectives, the negativeness of object, very negative. That's 90% are mental projection. Similarly, attachment develop. The positive appearances of that, actually, high percentage are mental projection. So therefore,
therefore, attachment and anger, hatred are all distorted states of mind.
So attachment, that kind. But desire with reasons, and desire complement with understanding of shunya. These desire, so the logical desire, samayima desire.
No, so these are based on some logical understanding and valid cognition.
So there are sort of many differences. The subtle way differences there. So selfish, and then egoism. There are two kinds. So egoistic sort of feeling, strong I. One type of that strong I lead, bully other, harm other, cheating other, extremely self-centered attitude. That kind of ego is negative. But another sort of strong, the sense of strong self, which create determination, willpower to serve other, to help other. You see, that kind of strong self is very positive. That's the basis of courage, basis of willpower, basis of determination, basis of bodhicitta. Weak person, difficult to practice that. So there are two kinds of sort of egoistic sort of attitude.
Sense of self.
Or sense of strong self. One negative, one positive. So similarly, type of anger also can be two types. Anger full of hatred, that's negative anger. But anger out of sense of concern, out of sense of compassion, that kind of anger is positive. Similarly to suspicion. There are two types. Fear, also two types. So there are a lot of sort of, detailed precision. Precise.
Precise. We have
precision. Like that. So, now this year, I think most probably we will accomplish the making a book or text which is about science, which mentioned in different Buddhist texts, like Bosubandhu's text or some others, or Dingnag's text and Dharmakirti's text. From these different sources, we are now collecting the
collecting information.
So in any way, we are making one book. As I mentioned earlier, you see the last about 30 years, 3 decades, I start serious discussion with scientists, mainly 4 fields: cosmology, neurobiology, and then the physics, particularly quantum physics, then psychology. 4 fields. Originally, I out of my own curiosity. Now, after I think 15, 20 years, then interest among scientists also increasing, among the Buddhist sort of scholars also increasing. Initially, among Buddhist scholars, especially those older ones, a little bit orthodox thinking, a little cautious. Now they're gone. They also, you see, really now showing interest. So therefore, now our dialogue, science, modern science, and Buddhist sort of certain concept become more or less institutionalized. So we already introduced lesson of study of science in some of our monastic institutions. And also in America, mainly, some university already used to carry, as I mentioned earlier, research, further research and carry with Buddhist meditation, Buddhist sort of logician, like that. So then right from the beginning, some of the organizer, they describe dialogue between Buddhism and science. I made correction. This is wrong. Our sort of dialogue is between Buddhist science and modern science, not Buddhist religion. So, actually, we can divide three parts in Buddhist literature, Buddhist text. One part, science. External science, matters. Buddhists also mentioned particles, or the very, very small sort of the particles, some similar theory of because of the atoms and these things. These things. Then mainly inner science, about mind, about emotion. There are so many. For example, one text is mentioned 52 different type of
mental factors.
Mental factors. There is a lot of sort of information about mind or emotion. When they sort of identify different emotion, you see no reference, this positive or negative, simply fact, such fact. That certainly is science, not religion. Then second part, Buddhist thought or Buddhist concept. In reality, if we analyze, things are moving always, as I think other day I mentioned. Based on that reality, Buddhist concept of impermanence develop. And also the reality, things are heavily interdependent. So from that, Buddhist concept develop, they were say dependent and arising concept, or relative, theory of relative develop. From that, develop from that because of that.
Based on
that reality. And then about concept of Four Noble Truths. These things more or less related with Buddhist religion. But like true truth, I think just the concept or the views of the reality, that's all. So, I discussed with some scholars, my friends, and they also agree. So we divided three parts. All 300 volumes in Buddhist sort of the text which is translated from India. Out of 300 volumes, over 300 volumes, about 10 volumes, 10 or 15 volumes translated from Chinese language. Otherwise, rest of the books translated from Sanskrit directly and some cases Pali. Maybe some cases from Nepalese. So there is about 300 volumes, can divide 3. Or the subject mentioned in these, contained in these 300 volumes, we can divide 3. Science, concept or philosophy, then religion. So Buddhist religion is concerned for Buddhist, not something universal. Any religion never can be universal. So that's Buddhist religion is for Buddhist. One time my Christian friend, a wonderful person, Christian monk, he often used to ask me some of the Buddhist sort of training about patience, about compassion, and also single-pointed mindfulness. So these are common. I always happy discuss with him. And one day he expressed to me he want to know more about emptiness. Then I told him, this is not your business. So the concept of absolute God, absolute truth, and the theory of interdependency cannot go together. Clear? So I told him, oh, this is not your business, this is our Buddhist business. So then he insists, oh, according to Christianity, also the concept of emptiness. I totally submitted to God, I empty. Yes, some meaning there. You can take that kind of sort of interpretation. Okay, he mentioned like that. So therefore, now the third part, religion, that's only for Buddhist. Then the first part, second part, particularly first part, science is universal, common. So we are carrying dialogue with modern scientists in the field of science, not religion. We never discuss about next life or nirvana or these things. We never discuss. This is Buddhist business, clear. So we simply discuss about science, about the reality. So I think next few months, I think we may complete that book. Then, as soon as complete, we will going to translate Chinese language and English language, Hindi language. Then, I think next year, this time, may be available. English translation or Chinese translation. Then you can start some kind of class in your own area, Singapore, even if it's a private sort of family. You see, you come and study, and discuss. And then when you get fuller knowledge, and
then once you have learned these texts, you may come to the Tibetan monastic institutions to debate with the monks and nuns.
So that's just information like that. So my hope is eventually, you see here now, the more detailed sort of explanation about mind, emotion, these things. So then we can, as I mentioned earlier, you see, make distinction. Usually, you see, people say, attachment is something good. If attachment is bad, then desire also bad. That kind of sort of,
So sometimes people misunderstand, merely understanding something very roughly, having a very rough idea, and then misunderstand about the details.
So among this group how many who study Tibetan? How many? Some? Are there
anyone who's learned Tibetan in this group, in the audience?
No one. Oh, yes, one here. One here. Two. Godo. Godo. Mage chunju. Oh, page ni. Chik ni sum. Dijigol. Shi. Na. Two. Oh, yes, yeah. Oh, yeah. Very good. So, last 50 years, I had opportunity meeting with Buddhist brothers, sisters from different Buddhist countries. Quite a number of them. Then eventually, I found, as far as the Nalanda tradition, Buddhism, is concerned, I think most information, better because of the availability, seems to be in Tibetan. In Chinese text, I think Buddha's own word, the other day I mentioned, I think more volumes in Chinese Gandhu than in Tibetan. As far as these Nalanda scholars or text is concerned, writing is concerned, Tibetan more available. And particularly the Pramana, epistemology, seems to see Tibetan. So we already have some project in Taiwan. Some Taiwanese Buddhist. We already start work for translation from Tibetan, those texts which not yet translated into Chinese, translated from Tibetan. And those books which not translated in Tibetan, translated from Chinese to Tibetan. We already start small group already. So I think interest about about Buddhism in general, and particularly the Nalanda tradition, I think will increase. So I think work, translations, I think will be more necessary, more and more necessary. So I very much appreciate those people who already study Tibetan. It's very good. Then there are some, among some Western scholars whom I know, you see, they can read Tibetan, but without knowing the meaning. So sometimes they know, they pick up because of that. So
Jarampuche has said that picking up one grain and saying, you might say that all the grains are like this, same as this.
So that means, you know, some scholars, you see, they got sort of knowledge, one word. Then that word comes every sort of page, then they felt the same meaning. That's not the case. Different philosophical field use same terminology, but different meaning. So you have to sort of study more wider way. You just study one book, one school of thought, and then if you felt, oh, this is the whole Buddhist concept or Nalanda concept, it is wrong. You have to study all these different sort of books, and also in order to know the particular term's meaning properly, you have to know the gunju sama train.
Holiness, you have to know the context in which it is explained and used by looking at the earlier version, parts of the text, and later version, parts of the text, and then see the context.
So, please, those people who already study Tibetan, please study seriously, continuously. Then which is more number, very helpful, very helpful. Tujiche, thank you.
His Holiness. Thank you, His Holiness.